Which Houston Texans are headed to free agency now that the season is over? Welcome to the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans offseason. I know it arrived before most of us wanted to see it arrive, but this should be a fun and interesting offseason for this Texans team. There's a lot of work to be done by General Manager Nick Caserio, head coach DeMeco Ryans, and so many others on that staff. A lot to get done, and one of the biggest things that the Texans are going to have to get done is figuring out which of these free agents to be should be returning for the Texans. But who exactly is set to be a free agent for the Texans? Well, I broke out a couple of individuals that I wanted to highlight. We'll go through the entire list of free agents to be for this Texans team. Throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Enter the hat raffle link in the description down below, and let's get to it. First up for the Texans, Jonathan Garner, the sacks leader for this team, defensive end who was a former third-round pick, picked when Bill O'Brien was here, and then had some promise 2 years ago. Injuries derailed last year in a mostly healthy season for Garner this year, and he was fantastic. He was a dominant run stopper. He was a really good pass rusher. He cleaned up a lot of stuff. He set stuff up for other defensive linemen. Garner is set to be a free agent. I would guess that he's checking in somewhere close to between $13 and $18 million a year. It won't be an easy decision when it comes to re-signing Jonathan Garner or letting him walk, or potentially the franchise tag if the Texans wanted to go that route, but that's expensive. But Jonathan Garner, he's the first person I wanted to highlight in the free agents to be for the Texans. I would certainly work to try to bring Garner back. There's not a lot of guys that are as good as Garner that hit free agency. At the same time, though, he's going to be expensive, and could you find a couple of different options elsewhere for the team to improve the team overall with the money that you spend on Garner? This is one of the biggest and toughest conversations that the Texans are going to have with some of their set-to-be free agents. Next up, running back Devin Singletary. He was fantastic when he finally took over the running back role for this team. He led the team in rushing. He was the most effective running back that the Texans had this season, and he kind of saved the rushing attack for the season when you think about how tough it had been to get Dameon Pierce going. And then Devin Singletary rattled off those couple of really nice games in the middle of the season. He finished the season really strong. I know the playoff game against the Ravens was pretty tough for him. But Singletary is a guy that's set to be a free agent, and he came in and he did exactly what he was supposed to do as a free agent last year. If Dameon Pierce isn't ready, take over the role. If Pierce is ready, fill in nicely next to him. Well, he needed to take over because Dameon Pierce couldn't take care of business at running back. I don't know if Singletary is a priority. He's one of the most productive guys that's set to be a free agent, so he gets the ranking right behind Garner here for me. But ultimately, there's a lot of free agent running back talent. There's a lot of draft pick talent at the running back spot. Dameon Pierce still on this team. He's not set to go anywhere unless the Texans make a move with him. So perhaps Devin Singletary is playing for somebody else. I'd work to keep him, but certainly only if the price was there. And if the Texans want to invest even more money than they previously have in the running back spot, there will be some options that are better than Singletary, but also more expensive than Devin Singletary. Steven Nelson, the cornerback for the Texans. He was fantastic to start the season. Through the first half of the season or so, Steven Nelson was one of the best players on the entire team. He was really good. Injuries caught up with him a little bit. He was banged up there towards the back end of the year. As he got a little healthy, you saw how productive he can be in the Indianapolis game, certainly in the Browns game. Nelson, it feels like, is headed for one last big payday. He's been a really solid corner. He's not a number one corner for anybody, but as a number two corner, as a solid second cornerback for a team, he certainly can fit in. I've seen projections for him about $10 million a year, maybe a little bit more. It could get a little pricey and a little expensive, and the Texans may want to invest in someone a little bit younger than Nelson at that cornerback spot opposite Derek Stingley, or if they head to free agency, maybe they spend a little bit more because they're getting a younger option to go opposite Derek Stingley. But Steven Nelson, I don't know that the Texans are going to prioritize bringing him back. I would not prioritize bringing him back. But if the money was right and he wanted to hang around for a couple of more years, certainly Steven Nelson would be an option to bring back. He's set to be a free agent. Dalton Schultz, the tight end for the team, and he was one of the only tight ends that was healthy all year long. Yes, he missed a game here or there, but he was far healthier than Tegan Quintiriano, who missed most of the season. Brevin Jordan missed some time as well. Schultz was a surprise last year when the Texans added him in free agency. He's set to be a free agent again, and I have to imagine some team is going to come in and pay him way more than the Texans are comfortable paying him. And I've seen projections in the double digits, $10 million, $11 million a year. Yes, Dalton Schultz was productive. Yes, he's really solid. No, he's not irreplaceable. There are other veterans that you could turn to. Maybe there's an investment in a draft pick. Maybe it's a young player that Nick Caserio identifies that's hitting free agency that hasn't gotten that tight end one opportunity just yet. I don't know that Dalton Schultz is going to be back. I wouldn't prioritize bringing him back, not for the amount of money that he's going to bring to the table, but he's set to be a free agent. Defensive tackle Sheldon Rankins was awesome at different points in this season. Banged up a little bit over the course of the year, but played most of the season. Had that fantastic game in Cincinnati against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. He was really good. He's a solid force. Rankins was added sort of as a mercenary. He didn't have low value. He was an expensive addition in free agency last year. I would think he's going to be looking for a multi-year deal. The Texans already have Malik Collins signed up to a multi-year deal at the defensive tackle spot. I don't know that you want to lock yourself in to both of those guys at the defensive tackle spot for the next couple of seasons. So Rankins, he didn't lose any value. He didn't have to rebuild his value. He just added to his value. I'm not sure that he's going to make his way back, but he is set to be a free agent. Blake Cashman, linebacker for the Texans. Injuries yet again popped up on Cashman's season. That's been the case for most of his NFL career, but he played a pretty decent amount. You'll remember he was the AFC Defensive Player of the Week 1 week for this Texans team. Cashman, I wouldn't prioritize trying to bring him back, but certainly he's a guy that if the number was right and his contributions, as a versatile linebacker, sometimes special teamer, you want to keep that around, I could understand why you would want to bring back Blake Cashman. The specialists are all free agents. Yeah, that's right. The kicker, the punter, the long snapper, all free agents. Kaimi Fairbairn at kicker, John Weeks at long snapper, and Bill Burr lookalike Cam Johnston at punter. They're all set to be free agents. I would prioritize bringing back all of these guys. The Texans have one of the best special teams units in all of football. Kickers are hard to find. I know Kaimi Fairbairn missed the kick against the Ravens. He missed the extra point against the Colts. He's still far more solid than most of the kickers in the National Football League. Cam Johnston's one of the better punters in all the NFL. We watched some really bad punting over the past couple weeks against the Texans. So I would not let Johnston, who is consistent and reliable, get out of there. And then John Weeks, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The only time John Weeks is going to stop playing football is when John Weeks wants to stop playing football. I'd bring back all the specialists. Now, those are the 7 kind of highlights that I wanted to make. I wanted to prioritize one free agent who played well but is not going to come back for this team, and that's George Fant. Fant's not coming back. He is likely going to get an opportunity to start somewhere after the production that he put together this season. He wasn't great, but he was certainly more than just serviceable at the right tackle spot. He played a little bit of left tackle this season, so he's got left side, right side versatility for a team. He came to the Texans in large part to rebuild his value should he get that opportunity, and Titus Howard's injury in training camp allowed Fant to do that. I would think he's set to be a starter somewhere else this season. So Fant, not going to be the right tackle next year. That's Titus Howard. I suppose you could have the conversation about bringing Fant back, making him the right tackle, and Titus Howard at left guard, but that would be a total waste of the contract extension that you gave Titus Howard. Titus Howard was brought back to play, or was extended, to play right tackle and play it at a high level, and he hasn't had that opportunity because he got hurt in training camp, and then when he was back, the Texans put him at guard. I'd like to see Howard at tackle, and that means no more room for George Fant on this team because he's likely got an opportunity to start somewhere. Other players set to be free agents. Desmond King is a name that I'd keep an eye on. He played slot corner for this team really well. If he's not expensive, I'd think about bringing him back. Noah Brown, the injuries caught up with him. He was super productive in a handful of games, but other times throughout the year, it just wasn't there. A couple of other defensive backs for this team. Kareem Jackson, I don't know that he's coming back. I don't know how much football he's got left in him. Eric Murray was a nice backup. He got hurt. His season was over. DeAndre Houston-Carson filled in nicely. He's a good backup player if you'd like to keep him around. Scott Quessenberry was maybe going to be the starting center for this team. He ultimately doesn't get that opportunity, getting hurt in training camp. Jerry Hughes, Tier Tart, Hassan Ridgeway, a couple of defensive linemen that I feel like you can find some higher potential guys out there in free agency to replace a few of those guys. I'd like to see Khalil Davis come back, the defensive tackle who played in the USFL prior to getting his NFL shot. He made a couple of plays for the Texans. I'd like to see him come back. A couple of more free agents. Denzel Perryman and Derek Barnett have filled in admirably in a couple of important spots and opportunities for this team over the course of the season. But I believe you can find veterans that can replace what they bring to the table. Neville Hewitt's a nice special teams player. Maybe it's time for somebody else to get those opportunities. And then Michael Dieter filled in admirably at various offensive line positions. If you want to bring him back as a depth piece, certainly he's got a lot of competition if he plans on trying to start, with Jarrett Patterson coming back next year, Kenyon Green coming back next year, both those guys from injury, Juice Scruggs playing really well. And then Shaq Mason, Titus Howard, and Laramie Tunsil, they're not going anywhere. So Dieter, if you want to bring him back as a backup, he's certainly a really nice backup. He filled in admirably as a starter as well. And then a couple of other just depth pieces. Steven Sims, I'd be interested in keeping him around in the wide receiver room, although they didn't trust him enough to put him a lot at wide receiver this year. The special teams contributions from Sims were nice. Josh Jones, that's a depth piece on the offensive line as well, and a couple of more depth pieces and special teams players and, restricted free agents or early restricted free agents, things like that. Nobody super of note that you're going to be super upset if the Texans don't bring back. That's who's set to be a free agent. Who would you make sure that the Texans keep in free agency? Hit the comments down below and let me know which of these free agents you'd make sure the Texans re-sign and wouldn't even let them hit free agency and test the market. On your way there, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. In the description down below, make sure to enter the hat raffle that we have going on. You can get yourself a Houston football hat like the one I am wearing right here. Houston football is where I do all my writing about the Houston Texans. The link is in the description down below, or you can Google Houston football Cody Stoots and you'll find the site. It is free to subscribe. There's always free content on the site. For just $7 a month, you get all the access to all the content. And then if you buy a whole year in advance, I'll give you 2 months free. And speaking of buying things, if you don't want to wait for the raffle for this sweet hat, you can buy it. The link's in the description down below. That description's loaded with fun stuff, okay? Hat raffle, buy a hat, Houston football, lots of fun stuff in the description. Lots of fun stuff coming in the offseason here on the YouTube page. Anytime the Texans make a big move, a big addition, somebody leaves the organization or the team, we'll be breaking it down here on YouTube. So subscribe so you don't miss anything. I appreciate you watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I can't wait until we talk Texans again soon.